We are rolling on March 12th, 2015 at UCLA in beautiful Los Angeles, California. It's 75 degrees out. It's a lovely day, isn't
82.
it? 82 degrees out, yeah. And we're going to debate the question, environmental concerns outweigh economic growth, or more important than economic growth. On the affirmative will be Shireen, and on the negative will be Nicole. Let the debates begin.
Because environmental decay is irreversible, I believe that environmental concerns outweigh economic growth, and there's three main reasons for this. First, economic growth is devastating for the environment. The more we grow economically, the more carbon people emit. That means that increased growth negatively impacts the environment. For instance, the more we grow, the more technology we advance that is bad for the environment. For instance, gas-guzzling cars, increasing demand for oil, or increasing need for electricity. Take, for example, the increase in the demand in oil. We think this is specifically bad for the environment because it leads to oil spills. Take, for example, on April 20th, 2010, when Deepwater Horizon oil rig exploded. This incident was the largest oil spill in U.S. history. The water in the Gulf will not be safe for years to come. According to figures released by Unified Incident Command, a joint venture between BP, Transocean, and Transocean in 2010, 4.9 million barrels of oil were leaked, 665 miles of coastline were contaminated, 11 platform workers were killed, and the initial estimated cost was $2.5 billion. Now, things such as oil spills are irreversible because we can't take back the harms they admit to our environment. For instance, the species that died because of this, the cost that we had to pay for this. So not only are environmental harms bad for the environment, but we also contend that they're bad for the economy because this instance alone proved that we had to spend $2.5 billion on trying to clean this up. Now, the second main reason why environmental concerns outweigh economic growth is that we must protect the environment, the long-term well-being of the environment for the sake of our future generations. We have a moral obligation to protect the environment for the sake of future generations. Here's two of the problems that our future faces. First is global warming. An increased output of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere is causing the planet to warm. Further, according to NASA scientists, 97% of them agree that warming is caused by human activity. And according to the latest IPCC report, if we do nothing to mitigate climate change, the impacts will include the alteration of ecosystems and of food production, damages to the infrastructure and settlement, morbidity, and mortality. That means the risk, if we do not put environmental concerns over economic concerns, we risk the future of humanity itself. Now, the second thing that we should be cleaning up is pollution. Remember, the largest trash island is the eastern garbage patch off the California coast. It is reportedly twice the size of Texas and continuing to grow. Because of this trash island, numerous keystone species, specifically birds, have died. At the point where keystone species are dying, this is negative for the environment because keystone species are keys to other species. If we lose certain amount of biodiversity, that is a chain reaction which ultimately will affect humans itself. Now, the third main reason why we have to weigh environmental concerns over economic concerns is that you can recover from economic concerns, but you can't recover from environmental concerns. Take, for instance, the Great Depression, the economic collapse in 2006. Those are all recoverable. We all came back for it. It didn't risk humanity in general. However, we can't come back to things such as like environmental degradation. Global warming is not irreversible despite like technological advances, and we can't get back keystone species or other species that go away if we don't focus our efforts on environmental concerns. So because economic growth is inherently bad for the environment, because we have to protect the future of humanity, and because we can recover from economic harms, but we cannot recover from environmental harms, I believe that environmental harms are absolutely more important than economic growth. And now open for cross-examination.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes the leader of the opposition for cross-examination not to exceed 1 minute in length.
Got it.
358, good.
How do you plan on recovering from economic growth while continuing to focus on economic concern? Because you said we can go back to economic concern, but
Talk to me, please.
you can go back to economic concern, but environmental growth will always be a problem. So how do you plan on balancing
Just history
the two?
proves that we have been able and we are always able to recover from economic concern. And I think at the point where we put the economy over our environment, that's actually bad for like the economy in general. If you take, for example, my example with the oil rig exploding, that was $2.5 billion that we had to pay just to fix this mess. And so I think that at the point where we put economic concerns first, we don't notice the environment, we don't like do things to stop like environmental harm, and that's bad not only for the economy but humanity in general.
And how do you plan on protecting environment with this allotted sum that we'd be saving?
Okay, so the resolution doesn't state that we should like it doesn't call for a specific course of action. It just states that it's more important than or outweighs.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Nicole, and I will be taking the side of the negative stance in this debate. There's no denying that the environment is very
Stand in the middle, please.
Okay.
Behind the green mark, yeah.
Here?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, cool. There's no denying that the environment is very important. It consists of the air we breathe, the food we eat, and exactly where we live. While the environment is very important, it is imperative that we focus on economic growth so that environmental concerns can be addressed. By focusing on economic growth, we can incorporate environmental issues into the economic system. According to the Library of Economics and Liberty, a study done in December of 2008 shows that economic growth occurs whenever people take resources and rearrange them in ways that make them more valuable. An interesting metaphor that was stated within this study was relating the production in the economy and relating it to a kitchen. To create valuable final products, we mix inexpensive ingredients together according to a recipe. The cooking that one can do is limited by the supply of ingredients, and the most cooking in the economy produces undesirable side effects. If economic growth could be achieved by doing one or more of the same kind of cooking, we would eventually run out of raw materials and suffer from unacceptable levels of pollution and nuisance. Human history teaches us, however, that economic growth springs from better recipes, not just more cooking. New recipes generally produce fewer unpleasant side effects and generate more economic value per unit of raw material. This metaphor means that we would get more out of investing in economic concerns because we could find new ways to battle environmental issues. Now, according to an article in the No Need to Panic About Global Warming, dated May 8, 2013, found in the Wall Street Journal, it states that often repeated claim that nearly all scientists demand that something dramatic be done to stop global warming is actually untrue. Also, the lack of warming for more than a decade suggests that computer models have greatly exaggerated how much warming additional CO2 can cause, as stated in an article published in the Wall Street Journal in 2012.
2 minutes.
Right. Another point is that the information on global warming and climate change that key opinion leaders project onto the audience is not always factual. President Barack Obama tweeted out that 97% of the world's scientists agree climate change is real, man-made, and dangerous on his Twitter in 2014. Now, in an article posted in Wall Street Journal in 2014, it rebutted it by saying the assertion that 97% of scientists believe that the climate change is man-made and urgent problem is fiction. The consensus of which he based his beliefs on came from a handful of surveys and counting exercises, which have been much contradicted, and much more reliable research has now been provided. Now, the solution that I'm proposing is that the United States need to focus on more improving third world countries' economy. The United States can allocate more resources to third world countries. A 5-fold to a 10-fold increase in economic activity would be required over the next 50 years in order to make ends meet and aspirations of escalating world population, as well as begin mass poverty. If the United States does not act fast, such poverty, there's no way to stop an exponential decline in the planet's stocks and basic capital, meaning forests, soil, species, fisheries, waters, and atmosphere. The solution will work because by helping out third world countries, it will turn into addressing environmental concerns. By tackling third world countries and helping them become more sustainable, they will not utilize much of the world's natural resources. This in turn, by focusing on economic growth, eventually we can address environmental concerns, like simultaneously, and come up with better efforts to which we can combat both.
I therefore
there-
conclude that
Therefore, I conclude that economic concerns outweigh economic growth outweighs environmental concerns. Now stand over for cross-examination.
good. Thank you. Stay in the middle for the camera. Thank you.
Here.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so your first contention states that economic growth results in environmental protection, but you give really no examples to this besides like a kitchen metaphor. Can you give me like a real world example where an economic growth has resulted in environmental protection?
Yes, because with economic growth, we can now have new technology.
Or just like things that have already happened.
Okay, what I'm saying is with economic growth, new technology can be invented to help thus prevent more damage to environmental concerns. And with that, I think more technology, like I said, new inventive, we're always looking for new ways to improve, and we're not going to rely on old ways to fix the problem we already have.
So we've been having economic growth for the past couple of years. What is an example in the last couple of years that proves this?
That proves what?
That economic growth really creates technology for
economic growth, because
I just want an example for the last couple.
By increasing economic growth, we can now place more funds.
Okay, you can answer the question.
I would say you can apply more funds into research foundations and things like that, where we'll have more money to allocate to those things in which people can find new technologies.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, the chair will now recognize the leader of the government for a rebuttal not to exceed 4 minutes in length, using 4 steps of refutation.
2 minutes.
2 minutes, excuse me.
So the opposition's first argument is that economic growth results in environmental protection. However, this is simply not the case for a few reasons. First, it's not real world. She doesn't give you any real examples of how economic growth results in environmental protection. In her speech, she only gives a kitchen metaphor. Further, when I asked in cross-examination, give me a real-life example of where economic growth results in environmental protection in the past couple of years, she couldn't do that. But two, remember, this is inherently wrong because economic growth actually causes environmental harms. Remember in my speech where I gave you the example of oil spills, and oil spills are a direct cause of economic growth because economic growth creates the demand for oil. We think this is inherently bad because it's bad for the environment. This is bad for keystone species, and oil spills are something that economic growth doesn't solve, it actually creates. But three, remember there are other things that economic growth does to harm the environment. For example, it increases carbon emissions. We create hydroelectric dams. There's a increase in the need for fuel. But let's look at her second argument where she says that the lack of warming or global warming is exaggerated. But one, remember that my source is from NASA scientists, all indicating that 97% of them agree that global warming is real and it is a threat. You're going to prefer my evidence to her evidence because it comes from actual scientists who do this for a living, as hers is surveys and exercises that don't come from an actual scientific source. That's why you're going to see that global warming is a big deal and it is a threat. Further, too, if you remember my Bjorn and Laurenberg evidence, it indicates that the impacts of global warming are irreversible and devastating. This is bad for not only species such as fish and birds, this is bad for humanity, and it can ultimately cause mortality if we do not fix the harms of environmental concerns. And at the point where we put in economic growth over environmental concerns, that's devastating for the environment. That's why I believe environmental concerns outweigh economic growth.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes the leader of the opposition for a rebuttal in 4 parts, please. Thank you.
Okay, so my opponent said that economic growth is dangerous to the environment. I disagree because with economic growth can come new techniques to battle environmental dangers that have occurred. We can't rely on old techniques to fix the problem that we've had for years and years. If we rely on old techniques, nothing's going to get done. Therefore, we need new technology, which will be funded by economic growth because that will be placed into new research programs that can actually fight these environmental concerns with new ideas and new ways that we can build things that can eventually help progress the environment. Also, the opponent said that the oil spilling was a huge debt to the society, but I disagree because It's not something that can happen. It can happen over and over again, but it was a freak accident, and oil spills don't happen every single day to hurt the environment. Yes, it was devastating and did cost a lot of money. However, I think there have been other freak accidents with environmental concerns that could go both ways.
Therefore,
I believe that using the oil spill as a reason to not want economic growth is irrational.
okay.
Lastly, my opponent stated about Trash Island and how it continues to grow. And that by funding environmental growth, it would fix this. I disagree, because how are you planning to fix Trash Island without doing something new? And that goes back to the argument I said prior, where economic growth would relate to new technologies that would end up helping the environment. Therefore, I believe that because of economic growth, the plan I had proposed will not only address economic growth and help the economy grow, it in turn would help the environmental growth.
Thank you very much. Okay, you may cross the house and shake each other's hands, congratulate each other on a good debate. It's now time for the audience to make an individual decision, please. And thank you, Shireen, for filling in at the last minute. Appreciate that. He has extra ballots.
They were put away. Here, let me find them.
Oh, up in the blue. Or in the red.
Anyone else need an extra ballot?
Do I have all the ballots? No problem. Take your sweet time as my battery runs down. Okay. Is that everyone? Do I have all? Is that a ballot?
No.
Okay. The decision on a squeaker in a 6-5 decision.
That's great.
It goes to the affirmative. Shireen, that environmental concerns outweigh economic growth, or are more important than economic growth. Let's go here for a like and then here for improvement.
Hi everyone, my name is Jaspreet.
Hi, Jaspreet.
Hi. So both of you guys are very well researched. I can see that. And in terms of my position, I went with affirmative because I do think, basically that is a driving force for our economic growth. I mean, if you don't have natural resources to capitalize on, there would be no economic growth. So that's why.
Fair enough. Improvement.
Hi, Nick.
Hi, Nick.
For improvement, I really found that Nicole could have improved by countering with more concrete examples to some of the cross-examinations that were very good. And I think Shireen should be more careful when saying environmental things like completely outweigh, because she should have incorporated a little bit of a balance. and also should have acknowledged that not all environmental problems are irreversible, and that some are reversible, and that Nicole could have also jumped on that and with evidence that, yeah.
Okay, so she was very extreme in her position to you, and that was a little bit of a turn off. Yeah, good. That's good feedback. Let me give you both some feedback. First off, for an extemporaneous presentation, it was good. You chose to give 3 simple reasons for your value orientation. I want you to start slower, because you tend to go a little fast, and smile more, and vary your tone. You have, when you watch yourself tonight on YouTube, you're going to see you get up to this thing and you go the same way, and you'll be more interesting and more likable if you vary it, and that would be good. Now, you used a very emotional example of the Gulf, a good one, and really screwed up the environment down there, screwed up the species, and was a big mess. You could have, there's answers to that. It got cleaned up. It was a one-time thing, but didn't really come out that way. For future generations, pretty good argument. Like that, and then and you talked about the certain kinds of species, and I like your argument about you can recover from an economic downturn, but it's harder. But you made it absolute, as Nick pointed out. Maybe you overclaimed your evidence in that respect a little bit. Let me go to your cross-X. You're going to see you're a little bit too aggressive, and so you hurt your credibility a little. Give her a chance to answer. Chill a little. In your cross-X, smile more. You were like going, I'm going to get her. That's how you look. No, we don't want that. What else? I didn't really like your refutation. It was much too long on the refutation, much too short on the impact. We got lost in your 3 points of refutation, and too short on the impact, and a better signpost on where you were and what you were doing and what you were refuting. So, just keep it simple. They said, I disagree. Here's why. And therefore, the resolution, or not the resolution. Nicole, well, you've been kicked around. And by the way, let's see, I don't think I'm speaking out of, let me just say, we all need to think positive thoughts for our classmate Shelby, who's sick. Okay, so think positive thoughts for her because she couldn't be here, okay? So think positive thoughts for her. Yeah. Okay, good. I'll just leave it like that. And if you want to go beyond positive thoughts, that's good. But anyway, Nicole. Interestingly enough, the best stuff comes from one of her quotes from Lomborg, chapter 15 of his text, of his book, The Skeptical Environmentalist, whose main argument is without economic growth, you can't afford to go green. You can't afford pollution. It's being a technologically advanced society that gives you the luxury to do these kinds of things. That was what you're trying to go for, wasn't it? But you didn't really have strong evidence of that. Instead, I thought okay. Let's talk about your kitchen analogy. I think that Shireen eviscerated this and really made it not so powerful, because she said, besides the analogy, let's come back to the real world, and you were just pregnantly silent on, could you provide those? Now, I thought you were really pushing a rock up a hill to try to deny global warming, although I admire your attempt. And I thought you had some pretty good evidence there about what problems these scientists are having as they overclaim their evidence and claim the and their I'm a scientist, believe me. That's what they're counting on, banking on, right? Yeah, shut up. Just shut up. The debate's over. Shut up. That's what they want people to do. And, and that's a part of what you were trying to get at here. Nicole, I didn't think that Shireen did a great job in refuting all your stuff, but she did a good enough job. Now, on your solution, it was unclear exactly what your solution was.
I know, at the time I got freaked out, and I was like, ugh, and I just spit it out.
So, I think if you had a stronger and clearer solution, that would have really helped. That would have, and then you could have talked about your solvency to that solution, and then your advantages would have made sense. Yeah. On your cross-X, Shireen just dominated it by her answers. You threw her a softball, and away she went. Right? And so, when you meet somebody like Shireen, you just have to say, thank you, and go on to your next question. You want to be careful on not going too far with that, and so then you become the issue of being a little obnoxious. On the rebuttal, pretty good of using the 4 steps. So you're learning how to refute, but you didn't getting at the major issues in your refutation. So overall, you both did a nice job. Thank you. Okay, all done. Yeah. Okay. Okay, will the next debaters please come forward? Just a minute, please.
Where's Proposition 6?
Let me get up.
Oh, I gotta change the battery, so give me a moment.
Oh, I'm gonna pee then.
What?
I'm gonna go to the bathroom then.
Yeah, please. Yeah, I'm gonna change the battery.
Did you go to the bathroom?
You can go to the bathroom. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
So I could drop off my midterm to you later? You'll be in your office?
Yeah, what time are you gonna do it?
Well, I'll probably be there at like 7.
Okay.
I have the final, and then I'll go home and get it, and I'll bring it back.
And okay, I come up and get my number because they locked the building at 7. So you will have to call me to get in the building. And then you can, if you can get in the building and I don't answer the door, just slip it. If you get there before then, slip it under the door.
Under your door?
Yeah. Okay, where's the next? What happened? Oh, they're in the bathroom.
You're gonna change the battery.
Oh, I'm going to change the battery. Yes. Okay. Good.